Hi, everyone. Greetings from sunny Southern California, the Webb campus here. I'm Allison Hansen. Thank you for joining us for this webinar this afternoon. Also joining me is Owen. He is our Assistant Director of Admissions here on campus. He's going to take just a minute to go over some of the technical issues for this Zoom webinar on how to use our Q&A and our chat functions. So Owen, if you'd like to go ahead and do that.
Absolutely, Allison. Thank you and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. If you attendees would be so kind as to move your mouse down to the bottom of your computer screen and click on the box that says Q&A. Once that box pops up, if you would be so kind as to type the city, state, or country from which you are tuning in, this will help us to ensure that we are in fact coming through to you loud and clear this evening. Incidentally, this Q&A box is going to be your best friend throughout the duration of the presentation. If at any time you have a question for our presenters, please don't shout it into your computer. If you would be so kind though as to type it into the Q&A box, we will answer as many as we can in the time allotted this evening. We will also, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, be maintaining a live chat throughout the presentation as well. So if you'd like to communicate with us that way, say hello, whatever you'd like to do, we are here for you. All right, well, I see Claremont, California, I see Bakersfield, I see Walnut, I see Pasadena. We are coming through loud and clear. So thank you all for being here. And without further ado, Allison.
Thanks, Owen. So this afternoon, we have two special guests joining us. We have Kathy and Kylie Osborne from up in Kirkland, Washington. Kathy is class of 1988, a Webb alumna, and Kylie is a rising sophomore and a boarding student here. So we have a special focus this afternoon on our boarding program. So what we'll do, we'll start with a series of questions for Kathy and Kylie to kind of help get you introduced to our program and answer any questions you might have about that. And then at the end, as Owen said, we'll turn it over to you for the specific questions you have for them. So to get us started, we'll take it back to the very beginning. And how did you hear about Webb and what made you want to apply? And I think we might have our answer to that, but.
So I am from Claremont. And Webb actually was started when I was in like upper middle school. And originally my parents said, no way are you going to go to a brand new school. But things worked out and I ended up.
The girls part of Webb, not.
No, the girls, yes, the girls' school was started. But anyway, I ended up attending Webb, as did my older brother, Robert. He was a Webb school alum. And and honestly, I can see Webb from the house I grew up in. So Webb was always a part of my world. And my best friend growing up was the daughter of the headmaster at the time. So that's how I ended up at Webb. And then a funny story about how Kylie ended up at Webb was that I went to my 30th reunion and I was talking to Bob Fass, who works in the development department. And he said to me, hey, you've got teenagers, like, are they gonna come to Webb? And I just laughed and I said, no, that's not a thing. We live in Seattle. I was not interested in sending my children away. And I said, no, absolutely not. And then when I talked to my husband on the phone that night, I told him what Bob had said, and he turned to Kylie and said, hey, Kylie, would you be interested in considering going to Webb? And she said, yes. So then my husband said, go look into it more. And so I ended up talking to one of my classmates whose daughter went to Webb and was actually graduating that year. And things led to things, and now Kylie's at Webb, and
yeah.
So we live in Seattle, and she flies down there and goes to Webb.
Yeah, and his Bob Fass's daughter, Riley Fass, is also in my class, and she's actually my best friend at Webb. So it's kind of funny how everything comes full circle.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And you just finished your freshman year, Kylie, and I'm wondering if you kind of want to look back on that and kind of talk about some of your favorite memories. What were some classes that stand out to you and kind of the boarding experience? What are some of the highlights of your first year at Webb?
Well, one of my favorite events at Webb was the peccary trip that you go on. Every freshman goes on it at the beginning of freshman year. And he's actually, Owen is in the museum where you can see some of our fossils. I'm sure you've heard about the Raymond M. Elf Museum. And so we go on peccary, which is, we go fossil hunting basically for, I think it's 3 days, 2 days. And I was one of the people who found some fossils, which was super cool. And that was like a realization like, hey, I can do these things that I've only ever seen in movies or read in books. So that was one of the best moments at Webb. And then also another one, my favorite class at Webb is actually Fundamentals of Composition, which Allison's husband teaches, Mr. Hansen, and he was my teacher. And I remember one day he invited all his advisees to bring them and their friends and have hot cocoa at their house. And it was just like, I was just chilling with my English teacher and his wife, and we had hot cocoa and ice cream, and it was awesome. And that was just such an awesome memory.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I should mention that my husband, Mr. Hansen, is a teacher here on campus, and we live here. He's also a wrestling coach and an advisor to 9th grade girls and a lead class advisor. So we're kind of one of those families that's all in here at Webb, the boarding experience. So thank you, Kylie, for that. And kind of thinking back too, as a boarder, what most surprised you about the boarding experience?
I guess it was how I wasn't very homesick. Like, I missed my mom and my dad and my brother, of course. Like, I'm not insane, but I missed them a healthy amount, and I wasn't like scared. It wasn't like I was crying myself to sleep every night. I was just not as homesick as I thought I would be. So it wasn't as scary as I was expecting it to be, which was a really nice surprise, actually.
And obviously nice for us as parents that, you know, she missed us that right amount of wanting to talk to us when we called, but not necessarily, she never called us and said, I'm upset. So that was really nice. She always had things going on. She was very busy, and made immediate friends and had great adults around her as well. So that was really nice for us.
Yeah, the only time I called her upset was when I had to go home, actually. So.
And so kind of speaking about that support network, here at Webb, of course, we have an advisory program that you kind of mentioned when you're coming over to our house and having our advisees over for cocoa and ice cream, a nice hot and cold mix. How would you describe your advisor's role in your life here as a boarding student at Webb?
They're really like a parental figure, but also an educational leader in your life. And so my advisor, I can go to for anything, and she's awesome. Her name is Miss Silva. She teaches orchestra, and she's the head advisor this year. I don't think she will be next year. I don't know. And so you can talk to them about grades, or if you're having trouble handling your schedule at Webb, or if you want to change your schedule, or if you are having social problems and you just want someone to talk to for help. If you don't want to go to the school counselor, you can go to your advisor. And they're just really all-encompassing support figures in your life at Webb. And you have weekly meetings with them, and you eat a lot of food, which is always awesome. And so you also meet friends through your advisory program, because it's not like you meet one-on-one all the time. It's you have a group of people, and then your advisor is supporting all of you at once.
And Kathy, did you find that you had to communicate with Kylie's advisor at all, or?
I did. So Linda was great about texting me kind of randomly. So she would just shoot me an email or a text that was a picture of them having dinner out, or, I just saw Kylie on campus and she told me about how she'd gotten this great grade or did a good paper. So it was nice to just sort of get those intermittent random messages, hey, your kid is still alive. I still know that they're there. And usually, pretty upbeat stuff. And then there were a couple of times Kylie had a health issue that I needed to deal with, that Linda and I were very much in communication about, there were just kind of occasional things, and there's anything really bad happened last year, but there were a couple of things where she, hey, just so you know, this is going on. So that was really nice to just get those communications from her. And she'd also tell us, hey, grades are coming out. This is what to look for in your inbox, or this is, hey, you should log in because this thing is available to you now. So that was nice.
I also still text pictures of everything I bake to my advisory group chat, even though we're not technically an advisory anymore. And they always are like, oh, wow, that looks so cool. So it's just like we've all grown so close over the year.
Oh, yeah, that's wonderful. And it sounds like you had a really good and a smooth start. And, you know, honestly, you know, as the wife of an advisor to ninth grade girls, not everyone does, you know, you can have a little bit of a bumpy start, but it's like you said, there is this huge support network here. But for you looking back, is there anything you would have done differently your first year at Webb as a boarding student, or?
I wouldn't change anything except I would do theater tech as my afternoon activity in the first and last season, because I really love doing theater tech, which I didn't know I did until I started it at Webb. And I only got like a few weeks of the season before we had to go home because of coronavirus. And so I would have just done it some more.
And so what, you know, aside from that, what advice do you have for our newly enrolled families that are going to be boarding? And Mom, you can talk about this too, and Kylie, as a mom's perspective and a student.
So I would say from my perspective, having flexibility, I really, you know, we didn't know what to expect. And I don't think anyone really knows what to expect the first time your child goes away for such a long period of time. And there were a couple of things that I learned, like I'm very much a planner when it comes to our flights and things like that. And I had a whole bunch of things lined up that then didn't end up happening because of coronavirus. And even if it hadn't been something as major as coronavirus, you know, the closer you get to, let's say, Christmas break, the more you kind of learn like, oh, actually, it would have been better if she'd gone here or on this date. So I feel like I probably won't plan as far ahead for things as comfortable for me. And the other thing that ended up being incredibly important, and I was really happy about for our family, was that I have good friends in Claremont, because I'm from Claremont. And one of my best friends, her son is a boarding student, but they live in Upland. And so having someone local that I knew that no matter what, that person would, you know, walk to Webb if they had to be with Kylie. And that was fantastic. So I know not everyone has necessarily like a great friend in Claremont, but I do think that I had lots of different people, faculty members and other people who said, you know, hey, is Kylie okay for this coronavirus thing? Does she need to spend the night at my house? I can take her to the airport. So making those close relationships in town, I would say, is something that I would highly recommend. And it doesn't, again, have to be a personal friend. It could just be a classmate and their family, because there are day students there, or the faculty advisor. But like, do make those relationships, because the world is unexpected sometimes, as we all have figured out. And just having that peace of mind that there is someone that you know that will be there for your child, I think has been great for us.
Yeah, in the same strain of advice, this is more for the students. Make friends with the people who are living next to you in your dorm, especially with your roommate, because my roommate was from Shenzhen, China, and the people next to us one of them was from Vancouver, and the other was from Philadelphia, and the people above us were from like central LA and Las Vegas. And so you get all these different people from different parts of the world, and you get so many different experiences. And so you have these people who you can like ask about, like, what's it like to live somewhere other than the place you've lived your entire life. And so it's just a really good idea to make friends with all different types of people, and you get that from being in your dorm. I didn't have any classes with my roommate, but we were still able to talk about the differences between our cultures because we lived together. And so you get a very unique friendship from living and eating and sleeping with these people.
Absolutely. And Kylie, I wonder if you wouldn't mind like walking us through maybe a typical day, a weekday on the dorm, and maybe what a weekend might look like for you, typically.
So a weekday, you have 3 classes a day. One starts at 8:30, one starts at 10:30, and one starts at either 12:40 or 1:20, depending on what day of the week it is. And if I'm getting those times wrong, I'm sorry, it's been so long since I've had real classes. And so usually you wake up at like 7:30 or 7. I know someone who wakes up at 5 every day to go on a run. I wouldn't do that, but you know, to each their own. And so then you go to the dining hall for breakfast, and there's always a hot meal, and then there's always cereal and bagels and stuff. And then you have your first class of the day, which is always a different class, because I'm sure you guys have heard about the block schedule before, where we have like alternating schedules every day because there's 7 blocks and 3 blocks per day. And if you have more questions on that, then I can answer those later. And then you have Chapel, which is a really unique program at Webb where you listen to a senior give a talk about their time at Webb and what they've learned from their Webb experience. And sometimes they're hilarious, and sometimes we walk out of the chapel sobbing, and it's just a really great experience. And you hear all these stories from people who you've maybe never even seen around campus before, because we typically don't have classes with upperclassmen, unless you're like in a really advanced math. And then after that, we have our second class of the day, which is again a different class every day. And then after that, we have lunch. And lunch is always delicious. Lots of chicken all the time. The dining hall loves their chicken, but there's always something for someone. And then we have our, sometimes we have long lunch, which is Mondays and Wednesdays, which then it goes until 1:20 and still, instead of 12:40, which you can use that time to do homework or hang out with your friends or do something active, or you can just go back to your dorm and watch TV. You can really do with whatever you want with your time. And then you have your third class of the day, which is the same length as the rest of them. And then we have afternoon activities, and everyone has to do an afternoon activity. So I have my water polo hoodie on right now. That's what I did in the winter season. I did dance in fall and theater tech in spring. I would recommend any one of them to anyone. They're all really cool, and you really can't go wrong with your afternoon activity. And there's like, for sports, there's a different level for everyone. So I will be starting varsity next year as the water polo goalie, but that's only because they don't have any other goalies. But I'm not bad. I'm just not super good. So there's something for everyone. And then after that, it's usually dinner time by the time I get out of whatever activity I'm in, because mine tend to last longer than everyone else's. I don't know why. And so you eat dinner at 5:30. And sometimes there's dessert, and then freshmen will have study lab. I don't remember what days study lab is on, because again, I haven't been on campus in so long. And that's like an hour or an hour and a half of time where you just go to one of the buildings and you do your homework. And so it's like enforced homework time, because it's really instilling in you in your first year, like, here is the skills you need to get your work done, and then you don't have study lab after that, so it's just freshman study lab. And then you go back and you do check-in at the dorms, which is mandatory, and you will get what's called a work crew, which is just you do work if you don't check in. So I would advise checking in every day, and then it's lights out at 10:30.
And your advisor actually would come through the dorm, right?
Yeah,
and
so advisors come through the dorms.
check and make sure you're there.
Different days.
Yeah.
And we have room checks too, so make your bed. Make your bed. And then a weekend. Oh, weekends are always different. There's, everyone sleeps in on the weekends, and everyone does homework on the weekends too. So usually I do my homework on Saturdays so I can have Sunday free, but sometimes I can't get around to it. And we always have like field trips. They're like runs to Target, or you can go to Little Tokyo. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can go all over, and you can like request a specific trip somewhere. And so we have all these different places you can go on the weekends. And they just have someone pick you up and take you there. And usually there's like 6 or 7 people in the van with you. And so you can do anything as long as it's not like flying home on the weekends. And you can also like spend the night or go to dinner with some of your local friends, which is super cool.
Very nice. So would you say after this 1 year, and Mom, you went through it and your brother did too, would you say the Webb experience is worth it? And if so, why?
Absolutely. I've only been through 6 months because I got sent home 3 months early. So maybe I'm not the best to answer this question. So why don't you answer it?
But I would say that actually that is one of the things that makes Webb worth it for us, is that even with the coronavirus, and she had to come home, that like school went on. And even though you're saying you haven't been on campus, she's absolutely been in school. And having another teenager who's in a local school, he was not getting that kind of ongoing educational experience that was similar to what he would have had in person. And Kylie really seemed to be getting very much the same education. So that for us was very eye-opening, that she was still getting all the goodness. And I know that Webb's been really thoughtful about what they're going to do in the coming year in case things go crazy again. So I feel a great sense of like, no matter whether she's on campus, off campus, in Claremont, but not, or in her dorm, but not allowed to go into a classroom, she's going to keep getting the education that we're paying for. And then having graduated Webb quite a long time ago, I know that for me, when I arrived, so I went to an Ivy League school after Webb, and very much felt that it was not nearly as hard as Webb, and that I was extremely well prepared for Webb. And I think for us watching Kylie go to Webb, the maturity that she has from having that boarding experience, and the diversity of her classmates, which we don't get quite as much here in Kirkland, a lot of diversity. That her needing to really advocate for herself and have a bank account and, go to bed when she's supposed to go to bed, all those kinds of things. One of the things that my classmate told me when thinking about boarding school was that you actually end up being closer to your kids, because even though you're not physically there, you're also not doing the nagging. Someone else is doing the nagging for you. So a lot of the interactions that you have with your child are more sort of rich. And I think we have definitely found that to be true, and that the richness of the relationship that we have it has been great, and not the, did you do your homework and did you brush your teeth and all that kind of stuff. Someone else is nagging her about that. So when we would talk to her when she was down there, we would tend to get like the more deeper conversations.
And also to comment on something you said earlier, she went to an Ivy school and she was like, oh, this is easy. I promise you, it's not like you're entering high school and it's like you're in the Ivy League. It's definitely nothing like that. They're not expecting you to like go through the summer after 8th grade and then come to school and be like, oh, I magically know so much more than I did before. They give you everything you need to know, and they teach it to you in a way that helps you understand it. And so I know that a lot of teachers will do check-ins during their classes, like, hey, am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Is this just right? And so they'll give you everything you need to succeed at Webb, which is more than other schools would be giving you. And so it's not like they're taxing you harder. It's that they're giving you more and teaching you what to do with the information you have, and then letting you run on your own. And it's a great system.
I am a little partial, but I do agree that the faculty are great here, and one of the best parts of Webb. And Kathy, I wonder if you want to just touch on too, because I do work with a lot of alumni. And part of what I find that's so special about Webb are the connections that you make, and the connections that you keep year after year. Have you found that to be true, with your Webb?
Oh, definitely. Friends? So my best friend I met freshman orientation, actually. And she's Kylie's godmother. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say I kept many more friends from Webb than I did, for instance, from college. Maybe that was just me, but absolutely, the lifelong friendships. Kylie claims that when she walks around campus, the teachers remember me. And,
it's true, because I look so much like her, apparently, that I've had faculty come up to me and be like, hey, are you Kathy's daughter? And I'm like, how did you know that? But yes. And so everyone's so like friendly, and they all know who she is for some reason. I don't know why. She doesn't know why either.
I don't know why either. Yeah, and I was a day student, so I didn't have that intensity of the boarding program. And Webb's a special place. It's a small place. People are, I really enjoyed being in an environment where everyone was motivated to learn, and yeah, it was great.
And just, kind of touching on that, where you were a day student and Kylie, you're a boarding student. Kylie, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, do you see a big divide between boarding and day? And what has been your experience with your friends that are both boarding and day?
So there's definitely no like mentality that's like, oh, I'm a boarder, you're a day student, we can't be friends. There's nothing like that. And so what you do see is that friend groups do tend to structure themselves like within categories, but also my friend group consists of me, a guy, and a day student. And so it's like, there's no division between classes or between boarding status. We definitely do make fun of the day students a bit, like, oh, you're a day student, but it's not in a malicious way at all. It's like, and they accept it, and it's pretty funny. But then you also have like the Foothill students, and they've known each other since they were like in preschool, and so they're all friends with each other, but they're also not a clique. There's no cliques at Webb, there's just friend groups, and they're not limited to any boarding or day restrictions.
As a parent, I see Webb really working hard to make fewer distinctions between day and boarding students than when I was there. And one of the things that I think you said as well is that day students might have a longer day at Webb or come back, maybe they go home for dinner or something and they come back to Webb and have more of those evening things. So I see that they're really aware of the fact that there could be this, like I know I felt that the boarding students were just having a nonstop party after the day students left campus, and there was a feeling of being left out. So it's really nice to see that Webb's actually like thinking about that and trying to make those relationships. Because again, like for the boarding students, it's fantastic to have a day student friend, day student families that day student friends who can help you with the local Claremont stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Perfect. So we'll have one more quick question before we open it up to the audience for their questions. The last one is, if you could just use 3 words to describe Webb, what would those words be?
Well, for me, it would be community, which is a huge buzzword nowadays, and it's a buzzword for Webb too, but it's really, really true. Like, we're such a family here, and it's an awesome community. And then my second would be support, especially with the advisory program. You're getting everything you need to succeed, and if you don't get that, then you can talk to someone about that, and you can be like, hey, I need this extra help, or I need these things, can you provide them for me? And they will definitely provide them for you if they can. And then my third word would be education. You're getting an education that's really second to none, and there's so many teachers with a higher education level than other teachers you would find in a school that's not like a private school or a boarding school. And so I have like several teachers who have like PhDs, and so it's like I'm getting the best of the best in terms of education, and I know that.
I hate to say it, but those are my 3 words too. Maybe slightly different takes on them, but those are the same 3 words. I think also for my family, sunshine. It's really something I think about with Webb. And I know when Kylie was actually an infant, and I went to alumni day, and my husband had never been to Webb before, and he just sat down on one of those stone walls, and he was like, I'm just gonna pitch a tent and stay here forever, look at the blue sky and the oak trees. And so when we think about visiting Kylie at school or taking her back to school, we think about the beautiful sunshine that's there and the beautiful campus. And even the smell of the live oak trees there in Claremont, like I really think about with Webb. But absolutely the community, and I think she's thinking of community in terms of the students there who are supportive and the teachers. But obviously, as an alum, you think about sort of that broader community as well that you get from all the alums and all the students and the teachers there. And then support, again, as a parent, that support that you both see for your child, and then also the support that you get as a parent to really understand what's going on in their day. Yeah, and the academics, of course, like I think that's probably the main reason a lot of us send our kids to Webb, knowing that they're going to get a fantastic education.
Send them off.
And I totally agree about the sunshine. We are so fortunate here to have such gorgeous weather and to be able to be outside. Love it. I've discovered I'm completely solar powered since moving.
Me too. Me too.
Totally embracing it. But one thing did just pop to mind as we're looking ahead. What are your plans for the fall? Have you thought about that?
So, as of course, no one's plans are ever in these days. You can't rely on them. But our current plan is that we'll drop her off the week of, last week of August or first week of September. And that, so our intention is that she will be on campus the whole year. I know that's what she wants. And from my perspective, the less back and forth that they have, the less dangerous it is with what's going on in the world. But so that's our current plan, is that she'll go back in August. But it's really interesting to see how Webb is thinking about these 6-week chunks, and then the month ahead where they'll tell you kind of what's going on. But I sure hope that the world is in a place where all the kids can go to school and have a normal school year as possible.
Absolutely.
I know that I want to go back no matter what.
She'll be pitching that tent. Yeah.
Owen, if you want to go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, Kylie and Kathy, thank you so much for your insights and for being such fantastic panelists for us today. To our attendees, if you have questions, the live Q&A is open, so type them into that Q&A box and we will get to asking them. Kylie, our first question is for you, but what is one essential item a boarder should bring with them to Webb that you wouldn't necessarily think you would need at first?
Oh, I don't know.
Can I just say that whatever we got for her ended up all over every other one else's dorms room.
Okay, I donated one pillow to the room next to mine. That is it.
I don't know. She ended up with someone else's blanket, and then
I borrowed my roommate's blanket. Slander and lies. I would say I only brought it because I know that she always brings it when we go traveling, and I don't think about it, but toenail clippers or just fingernail clippers, which is like totally way out there, but you don't think about it, and then you get there and you realize, oh, I need to clip my nails. And especially as someone who plays water polo, we have to clip our nails like every day. And if we don't, we like sand them down in the concrete. So it's nice to have a nail clipper with you. And like a good backpack. You're going to be using it a lot, even if you only have your books for one class in it. Some days you'll have like your 3 classes in a row where you have like 3 books for each of them. I know that my ABC days, my BCD days, my backpack weighs like 10 pounds. And so I need a strong, good backpack.
Yeah. I have to say, she seems to be at Target every weekend. And so honestly, there's so little that they can't get when they get there. So actually, yeah.
I go to Target for food. My roommate and I get food a lot.
And Kylie, we also have a question coming into us about the world language courses at Webb, because every student is required to take them. What language did you take during your first year, and what was that experience like?
So I'm taking Mandarin, which is the smallest language class among people at Webb. So we have Spanish, French, and Mandarin Chinese offered at Webb. Most people take Spanish. Some people take French, some people take Mandarin, but it's a really cool program because you're learning things and then you're being taught in what context to use them, which was something that I learned Spanish at my elementary school, and then I didn't have a language program at my middle school because it was so small. And so it's like they teach you the foundations and they teach you where you can use these things and like how to use them. And then they have you practice with native speakers, and we have like language tables. So it's a really well-rounded program at Webb with languages.
Wonderful, thank you. And Kathy, a question for you. What advice do you have for parents, especially if this is the first time that their children will be boarding, coming into Webb, coming into high school and starting that transition? What advice do you have for parents to help their students navigate that transition as successfully as possible?
I thought you were going to ask me what language I took.
Well, while we're on that subject, what language did you take?
Is what I took. I took
Nice.
Wow.
Latin. You know, I think, again, flexibility. And then also, we were talking yesterday about, you know, taking this as an opportunity to just slowly let your child, just like I feel like all of their teenage years are the parents' opportunity to slowly let go. And I do think that we were not expecting our child to go to boarding school. That was not on our radar at all. So it's sort of accelerated some of the things that we, you know, we didn't expect to do until she went to college. But I do think that allowing your child to experience the fact that they are away from home. So you know, we tried really hard not to smother her with too many phone calls or contacts. We did call her if she didn't call us. And she sort of said the other day, like, I'm really sorry I didn't call you as much as I should have. And almost every time we called her, she was doing homework, which was nice to hear. But I'd say that's the main thing is I do feel it's important to let them, to just be confident that there are people at Webb who are making sure they're alive, and to let them breathe a little bit. I do think that's important.
Also, I agree with that. Your child will be busy at Webb. There's a lot to do. You're disappearing again.
Oh.
There's a lot to do, and there's something happening all the time at Webb. And so if your child isn't calling you, you can call them, but I promise it's not that they hate you. They're just busy.
That's good to hear.
Well, unfortunately, everyone, our time together does grow short, but we do have time for one last question. And Kylie, it's for you. Favorite Webb memory thus far?
Oh, I talked a little bit about it before, but it's generally things that I can spend time with my friends with. Friends. Okay, sorry. Another memory I have that's awesome is it was our last water polo game of the season, and we pretty much knew we weren't going to win because the pool was like super salty and I couldn't see, which is bad because I'm the goalie. And it was just not great conditions, and it was really hot, and we were all exhausted, and still we had an amazing day. And it was just so much fun, and we were goofing around, and not during the games, but we were goofing around when we had time to goof around. It was just such an awesome day, and I talked to people who I wouldn't really talk to before, and it was just such an awesome moment of like, yeah, things aren't really going our way and it's kind of bad conditions to be in, but we were still just having so much fun because we all liked each other as people, because everyone you meet you're gonna like at least a bit.
I did want to say too that Kylie had never played water polo before Webb. I don't know if you've ever seen water polo before Webb, and then she's jumping in and being the goalie on the team. The other thing I meant to say was that Parents Weekend was really awesome, and I highly recommend planning to go to Parents Weekend if you're new. We got to meet all her teachers. We sat in on classes, learned that we've forgotten all our math, and so I highly recommend that for parents as well. Plan that into your calendar to go to Parents Weekend in October. It's October, right? I think it's October. Yeah.
It's when Salmon Days is. So when is Salmon Days? October.
I think it might be in February this year so far.
Oh no! Well, whenever it is, go. I highly recommend it.
Don't plan your flight quite yet.
Okay.
Well, Kylie and Kathy, thank you both so much for being such awesome presenters and for sharing such great information. Allison, thank you as well. And to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us for the presentation. It has been our pleasure hosting you today. Feel free to reach out to us in the days ahead if there are any additional questions you have. But thank you all again for attending the webinar with 2 Bs. Best of luck to all of you in the days and weeks ahead. And don't be strangers. Let us know if there's anything you need. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.